Johntay Cook has left Washington.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into a special bonus edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Armond Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're coming at you on this Monday evening with a special bonus episode. Lars, a lot of bad news we got to get to. Armond Hawkins is headed out of Washington, the assistant director of recruiting. That's a big loss, but the big one, five-star wide receiver Johntay Cook, formerly of Texas, transferred to Washington and didn't play a snap. Less than 2 weeks with the program and has been dismissed. They've parted ways, whatever way you want to say it. Lars, a couple of things we got to say real quick right off the bat here. First, shameless plug for our Locked On Huskies Insider program. Had this morning, put out a little note, just said, hey, Adam Gorney put out this report. This is what we're hearing. Can't dive into the details, which we won't really dive into the specifics of things that we've heard on the show. Just going to leave that one as it is. But second, this is just there's a lot of things not to like about this whole scenario.
Yeah, the whole Seattle and letting people cook doesn't work. And I think, with that big, and pun intended on that one, but no, this was, you talk about shameless plugs, go back to when we talked about Johntay first on the show before he even committed, when this was a high risk, high reward. And not necessarily, when I say high risk, high reward, it's not like, oh my God, you're going to blow up the program if he comes in. But in a way, it's like if you let somebody with a toxic, let's just say, character, for lack, I'm not saying that's the case, but let's just use that as kind of an example here. If you let somebody come into your program like that and then it festers and it stays, that can deteriorate a program. We've seen that at multiple schools over the years, not with Johntay per se, but just with players where you see like 1 or 2, 3, 4 guys start to come in the program and don't end up building the culture and actually end up tearing it down. That was kind of the, when you left Texas the same way he's now leaving Washington, maybe it's not the school or the coaches, it's the player. And we're not taking shots here, but it's just, there's only so many guys that you want to look at and say, okay, we'll give you another chance or we'll do this and that. And so in the addition of by subtraction thing, they can probably get a better receiver in terms of talent, because when you back it up, here's the thing. He hasn't done anything at Texas. Two touchdowns, 20 games, couple hundred yards. Denzel could do that in 2 games next season.
I absolutely agree with you here, but it's I'm going to get into like just the way that all plays out in terms of the room in a few minutes, because I've got a lot of thoughts there as well. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but there's just a lot to unpack here. And I think the number one thing that needs to be said here is this just is not a great look for this coaching staff right now. And you and I certainly have a lot of feelings with the staff that we think that they've done a really good job in terms of development. We saw it at Arizona. We've seen some good things over, the first season at Washington, obviously Damon Williams being the prime example. But this is one of those things where, it took him a while to commit, and it kind of feels like, hey, Florida may have backed off there at the end from a conversation I had with a source earlier today. But there's so much to just look at in terms of the way this entire process played out. And you can just kind of say maybe the writing was always there. And the biggest question that this poses is, are you going to find a way to learn from this? Because if somebody is leaving in this fashion, less than 2 weeks after they signed with you, then it's a failure of a player evaluation. And you need to find a way to reassess that in some way, shape, or form. That's the next step that needs to be made, because that's the really only way that you can look at this. It's not, oh, hey, this guy showed up for spring ball, wasn't able to get the job done. We weren't impressed. He wasn't working hard, whatever it was. And we decided to say, hey, we're over the scholarship limit anyways. We think it's best if you hit the transfer portal again. That's not what this is. This is something completely different. It has nothing to do with on-field performance, production, or even skill. Like there's a completely different factor going on here, which is really unfortunate because, Lars, it does majorly impact Damon Williams and this wide receiver core. which we'll get to right after message from our good friends over at Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. I got to go see Billy Joel with our good buddy Spencer McLaughlin over of Locked On College Football, and the energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, and I'm so excited for that because I'm looking at baseball tickets already. Using the Game Time app and with Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals that could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal is particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And the best part, when I won, I got paid instantly. To take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So, Lars, as unfortunate as this is in terms of everything we needed to talk about in the off-field case, on the field, this is a really big blow because you and I hopped on an emergency podcast just like this one when he committed and said, hey, this is the 5-star athlete that you can use to stretch the field, and he can do all these different things, and there's so much exciting potential in this offense for a guy like this, and now, poof, gone.
Somewhere Chris Peterson is crying tears of joy at this. And the reason why I say that is for all the times we're like, hey, go get this 5-star, go get this, go get this. And he's like, hey, you know what? What's wrong with the 3 or 4-star OKG? Now, again, the OKG marker and all that got teared apart. But here's the thing. You can coach up an Audric Harris into, and again, he's not going to be Johntay in terms of the 5-star status and the measurables and all that, but you can get better production from a guy like that you can coach up and invest and know that it's not going to be a questionable case as to whether they're going to be doing certain things or not doing certain things. And this is more or less, the reason why I say Chris Peterson is it's, for all that you can say, I think Ajay Hall is another good example of this, where you can have all the talent in the world. You can go to all the big programs. But if you can't get it together, you got to go to a JUCO or an FCS school, and that's going to be the route that you're going to have to go. Meanwhile, the big programs are going to be taking guys that they can actually coach and develop. What's one thing Kalen DeBoer always said about Rome Odunze? The most coachable player he's ever had. Yeah. Those are the type of guys that you want, and you can get those 4 stars. That's easy. I think this is going back to what you said in the last segment. Jedd's got to assess the character in this one because this was really you're going to take another receiver. They're going to go find another receiver. I'm sure they'll find a guy that can stretch the field and everything like that. But with that being said, this was an unnecessary take. Now, again, yes, the talent's all there. You can talk about, hey, this is a big potential for Damon and everything like that. Damon didn't even care to have a relationship with him because he only had him for 3.5 weeks, 3 weeks, like 2.5 weeks.
I don't think unnecessary take is the right word to use here. I don't think you're wrong in terms of just in terms of, the player and the way this worked out. Sure. I just want to make sure that's clear because at the position you needed a wide receiver and now you need one again. And you're not going to find one in the cycle anymore. True Edwards was a guy you and I really liked. He's gone. He's off the board. Everybody else is off the board. Jordan Dwyer, whoever else it was that you were in on that you thought you might have a shot with, that's all gone. That's off the board. So now you have to wait to the spring portal period because you're going to need one again now. We're going to be having this conversation again come April when that portal period opens for, just to get some veteran help in the room. Now, you and I like the young bodies in the room, whether it be Rashid Williams, whether it be Kevin Green, Justice Williams, Audric Harris, Raiden Vinesbrett, Chris Lawson, as we start getting the true freshmen and whoever else. There's a lot of talent that we like at the position, but it's all very unproven. And both things can be true. You can say, hey, this guy's really exciting, but he hasn't shown anything yet. Rome Odunze was in that mold at one point. Jalen McMillan was in that mold at one point. But this is it's just really concerning now to just look forward and say, hey, we think Rashid Williams is going to break out. We think Kevin Green is going to break out and is going to be really reliable. And that's all well and good. But without another veteran guy in the room, it's just going to be a little scary for fans.
It will, but this goes back to the selling point that Jedd has in recruiting, where look at the the trio of 1,000-yard receivers that we coached up at Arizona and Washington with Denzel, Dorian Singer, to Terry McMillan. You go down the list of guys that Jedd has that is pitched to sell. You don't have to even go back to Rome Odunze and Jalen and say, hey, we want those guys, but at Washington. Well, you didn't recruit those guys. Use the guys that you have. You have 3 or 4 that you can point to and say, look, player X, you're 6'4", whatever. Don't you want to come and play in this offense, catch 50, 60 catches, 70 catches, 900 yards, 1,000 yards for a couple of years, and then go to the NFL? Like, it's an easy selling point that Jedd has, and we know it. We saw it firsthand how hands-on Jedd is with his receivers.
Yeah.
And so that's why this take was just so bizarre in terms of, I saw the upside. We both saw the upside. But it's just like, you don't need to do some of that, especially to your point, with a guy like Damon, a young quarterback. You don't need to give him a headache. You need to give him help, not a headache.
Lars, we got to switch gears here a little bit because Washington suffered its biggest loss to North Carolina, which we'll get to right after a message from our friends over at Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for a nice new couch, and their huge selection makes it easier to find pieces that fit my style and budget. My favorite part, the free hassle-free delivery. Even for the larger items, Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. And to check it all out and give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair, just head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Lars, Armond Hawkins is on his way to North Carolina. Now, for anybody who doesn't necessarily follow the off-field staff very much, he was Washington's assistant director of recruiting, and this was somebody who was a big part of Washington's development of relationships with the 25 class, with the 26 class, and beyond. And he was also very helpful with the guys in the secondary, but something, we hinted at on the Wednesday show, so get there. I've hinted at it one or two other times at this point, but he is going to take the defensive backs job at North Carolina, and this is a very significant loss.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't help but thinks it helps a certain transfer cornerback make his decision, but that's neither here nor there. We'll leave that for another day. But this is a loss, and I think it speaks to the development that Jedd Fisch has been able to do, because he was one of the guys that found Armond Hawkins or whatever, gave him one of his first big opportunities, paired him with John Richardson, and kind of really built what Jimmy Lake and Will Harris had in mind at Washington back years ago, in terms of getting a young recruiter and a young coach together and just say, hey, you know what, turn these guys loose on the recruiting trail. We've seen the development from John Richardson, and honestly, Hawkins has in the same mold where he was on the field, helping guys. It wasn't just a guy in the office, a good like a Tosh Duploy, but in the office, like, he wanted to be an on-field coach.
Yes.
And so in that respect, this isn't a Jedd didn't do anything to keep him. This is a problem that you're going to have in college football, where these analysts / off-field positions are usually 1 to 2 year positions, and especially in the analyst role that he was in a way, because again, he also had the assistant director of recruiting title. So there was layers of things going on there, but they're usually only 1 to 2 year positions, and so you're going to have some turnover. And this is where you can kind of look at Jedd and say, okay, well, who's up next? And similarly, you look at a guy like Caleb Williams on offense. You're going to have some of these guys.
Caleb Wilson, yeah, sorry, when I say Caleb Williams, yeah, different guy.
Good. Both have good arms, though. Worth noting. Both have good arms. But with that being said, these are guys where this is where Jedd has to lean on his, kind of NFL background, where so many guys where, yes, it's absolutely a loss, but then turn that loss into a selling point. Look at what he's able to do. He's able to go from here to here. Now he's a position coach. Now he's at UNC in a Power 4 program. This isn't, going – Azusa Pacific to Colorado State to Colorado Mines, working the climb up very slowly. This is a big opportunity for somebody to come and fill.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the interesting things about it, where in terms of the safeties coach, that on-field position coach, I think, I wrote about it a little bit over on Huskies Wire, that I would expect Grant O'Brien, who was Purdue's safeties coach, to maybe follow Ryan Walters. He was with him at his 3 previous stops. He was with him in Missouri, with him in Illinois, with him at Purdue. So that's the name I've been alluding to a little bit, in terms of this might be the writing on the wall that somebody else is coming in to take that job. And when we talk about the loss, it is, Lars, as you said, the off-field, that recruiting staffer kind of role. And I would expect them to turn internally to find a way to fill this role. The name that comes to mind for me is Jake Crawford, who's a guy who's been around the program for a couple of years and has rose to the ranks as a guy who's been very loyal to Washington throughout the last few seasons. So that's just a name to keep in mind there because, Lars, as you said, it's a 1 to 2 year thing for a lot of these guys, and you want to find a way to continue to rise through the ranks because a lot of these off-field recruiting coaches, they do want to eventually step onto the field and do that job. And again, it doesn't mean that this isn't a loss because, like we said, Armond was great with the relationships, with the, doing that and just finding ways to get in with different guys around the country. But this is a very interesting opportunity that Jedd Fisch has, where we saw what he did in this last cycle. Whereas I'm going to go out and I'm going to hire a whole bunch of coaches' sons to fill these roles, whether it be Luke Del Rio, whether it be Jake Lynch. And I'm not saying that to disparage those guys because those are strong hires to make. And we saw, John Lynch, Jack Del Rio, we saw those guys come around the program, which is one thing. But he has an opportunity to maybe bring in a young guy like Fa Tuitele was last season, where it's, oh, hey, this is a guy who used to play for us, wants to get into the coaching game, and here's a way for him to start out. And what better guy to help us recruit to Washington than somebody who played here and knows what it's like. So just a couple of things to keep in mind there. Those are all things we're going to have a whole lot more on over the course of the offseason because, Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all every day for tuning in. And if you want more bonus content like this, all that sort of stuff that we're doing, you got to make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel, new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you don't miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday.